Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the BK Meditation Center online. We're coming to you tonight from various locations, and it's the third Sunday of the month. And each third Sunday, since over 40 years in the USA and more than 80 around the world, BK centers have opened their doors for world peace meditation, all 9,000 centers. And I am hoping that we'll be having more and more people join us for this very special occasion by bringing our own good wishes and special vibrations of peace to the world. We really are making a difference. And anyone who has met the BKs, even one time, will have heard the words Om Shanti. Om means I am, peace. Shanti is peace. So before we begin, let's take a moment to bring ourselves to those words of Om Shanti and take a moment of silence. Thank you so much. Be prepared to be inspired this evening by our special guests. We have two very, very special guests to enjoy a conversation with a very special third, not a guest, but someone who's very familiar to the BKs, and that is Meredith Porte. Most of you know her as the recently retired producer and host of several shows on WLRN TV, and also from her time over 30 years at the BK Meditation Center. So Meredith is with us tonight, and I'm going to invite her to introduce our really special guests. We've been having conversations that matter each third Sunday for the past 2 or 3 years now. And this one is going to be one of the best, I guarantee it. So Meredith, over to you, and for you to introduce our special guest tonight.
I just want to say I'm very excited to be here tonight. And I think it's because we have been having conversations the last couple of weeks about making a difference in the world and thinking about what it is that we can all do to bring about some kind of change. And I know that we often feel, are we doing enough? Or is anybody doing enough? And then we come across and we meet two people who are exuberant about the work that they're doing, and work that they're doing that I truly believe, and I know you do, Kathy, is making a difference. And it's maybe one day at a time, one situation at a time. And I can't wait to introduce you to them. So to begin with, I'm delighted to introduce you to Asha Walker, who is the founder of Health in the Hood. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Right? Now, Asha's been at this creating community gardens around South Florida for the last 8 years. Asha, that's a long time in terms of Miami time, right? And a long time. And it started with one garden at a time, and another garden at a time, and another community garden at a time. And now I think you have 7 or 8, and you've got more in the making right now.
We do, yes.
People might not realize, and maybe I didn't even quite realize how important the work is that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with the fact that people need to eat, especially at this time, and to get healthy foods, not just, I don't want to say frozen foods, but the instant foods that you get, the foods that are prepackaged foods. And a lot of people live like that because it is cheaper and it's more accessible. And here you go, 8 years ago, and you say, I'm gonna do something different for the people of South Florida in underserved communities is what you've been doing. So I want to hear more from you in a minute, but we have to introduce Bradley too. He's waiting to be introduced, and I can't wait to introduce him. So Bradley Bennett, you are, we had a wonderful conversation on the phone earlier this week. And we started talking about journalism. You worked at the Miami Herald for many years. You were at the Sun Sentinel. I can't believe that I never met you all the years that I was at WLRN, but I knew about you and I knew about the work that you were doing, and through your wonderful wife, especially, who I absolutely love, Adiela Bennett, who I go back years before you even met her, I'm pretty sure, who does a lot of good for the world. But you began as a journalist, and I think it was about over 30 years ago. And am I right? About 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
1990.
from the moment that you got to go on a trip with somebody to meet, to see a story being done with somebody quite famous, that changed your life. You kind of had a feeling something was going to happen and that had to do with journalism. And we're going to talk about that. Kathy and I are going to talk with you about that. So after years of being in journalism and being a reporter, you were with, as I said, the Herald, you were with the Sun Sentinel, the Detroit Free Press, many newspapers around the country. You then also went to Auburn University. You became a professor and you taught a lot of young people. And we definitely want to hear about that. Want to know kind of how young people see journalism today and creating change in the world. And recently, you became the interim editorial director at the Southern Law Poverty Center in Montgomery, Alabama, which is one of the most successful organizations in America that's dedicated to fighting hate crimes across the country. And it didn't just start, it's not a new organization, it's such a respected organization. It goes back over 50 years, doesn't it?
Yeah.
People, I mean, let me just start with you and then we'll get Asha going and we'll all start talking, right? I was going to say that I mean, we all hear about it over and over again, and we see the horrible things that are happening in terms of hate crimes in America and in the world. And I mean, a start has to be like an organization like yours that, you know, pinpoints what's going on, that reveals what's going on. If it weren't for organizations like yours and for journalists, we wouldn't know even that these things are happening. But then your organization goes on to really pursue it, right? As I understand it, and try to, you know, rid our society of, you know, all the hate crimes. I guess my question to you is, what is happening in our society? And maybe even before the last few years of, you know, what's been happening politically in America. I mean, we got to go back earlier. What's happening, you know, that it seems to just be on the rise like it is?
Well, I mean, I think you're right, absolutely right. You have to go way back, you know, to even before the country was founded, and you know, the way it was founded and by whom it was founded and for whom. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have to go back to really the original sin of slavery that you know, not a lot of people know really started with what we call Native Americans now. You know, there was an attempt made to enslave them, and you know, what they accomplished was actually basically tantamount to genocide. You know, between the diseases that were brought over from Europe to just you know, the backbreaking labor. So you know, they realized, you know, it didn't work, you know, and that's not even talking about the you know, relocation and pushing people you know, out of their homes and really taking over their homes, and you know, which just killed a massive amount of people who were here long before, you know, others. But then you go to you know, the bringing of Africans here for slavery, and you know, many, you know, millions died on the Middle Passage, you know, and the enslavement that formed the basis for the entire capitalistic system of the United States. You know, that really is at the heart of, you know, of everything. I mean, you had a constitution that said, you know, all men are created equal, and you know, right there you're excluding women, but you know, you're really talking about white men and white men who hold property to the exclusion of everyone else. You know, no one else really has rights, and those rights have slowly been fought for and gained, and are still being gained And it's a fight that's ongoing. So I think you have to recognize in America that there's that original sin that hasn't been atoned for yet, and not even acknowledged. Up through slavery, through Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Movement, and you could see it on display on January 6th when a large number of white supremacists really inspired by rhetoric from former President Trump attacked our democracy, so that it's a republic for certain people but not others, seems to be the ongoing systemic situation that we have here, and we haven't resolved it yet, but that's something we're working on with other organizations at the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is to bring more justice and fairness and equity. We don't even call it equality anymore, because that's something that's been used from Plessy versus Ferguson to equal opportunity, which is really not, it was never equal. So what we want is equity, that everyone has the same access to resources and opportunities as everyone else.
Yeah, and so it's just been a long, hard fight for a long time. And I know that Kathy, we're going to want to talk a little bit about how do we really get to the root of this just whole way of living in society, and like you say, going back so many years, and how can we do something that can possibly, hopefully, and I know the Brahma Kumaris do believe in transformation, where people just see each other differently and something dramatic changes. And I want to get to Asha, and Kathy, maybe you want to ask Asha a couple of questions, because she's doing it vegetable by vegetable, garden by garden, right? It's just changing the life. It's different than what Bradley's doing, but yet it is changing people's lives and making them feel that they can be part of something and get something in life, and especially in hard times, it's.
May I, before I want to sort of prompt Asha on one little piece of this. I've never heard any professor do a better job than you did, Bradley, of summarizing about 400 years of life in the United States.
Thank you.
So we were talking before we
close
went
it at the
live.
Capitol.
Yes, from then to now. And we were talking before we went live about the generational handoff. So let's make that generational handoff to Asha. And I'd like to hear what you think about what Bradley said, and knowing of your roots, your personal roots, and your dad, how we, because for some it was just too overwhelming, too disheartening. But how do we get from there to here to the future? You are the future. And then tell us about what you're doing with Health in the Hood.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. I'm just so honored to be with this group and to be entrusted with the torch. It's definitely in my DNA, but I take the responsibility very seriously. But I'm Asha Walker. I am the CEO and founder of Health in the Hood. We build vegetable gardens in food deserts. So we convert vacant land and build vegetable gardens instead of having mattresses and crime-ridden vacant lots. We grow food, teach people how to grow their own food, how to harvest it, what's great about it, real versus processed foods. Really, our gardens become our living classrooms. So I'm sort of I have an on the ground perspective. I think that's what I can kind of bring to the table tonight. We are, in communities that are considered food deserts, so they're more than a mile away from the grocery store. And to kind of tie it back into Bradley's synopsis of why we're where we are, I think that what's important about telling this story about food justice is that we think of food justice as a separate issue from social justice, and they're not. Food justice is social justice. Food is an equalizer. And if you don't have access to the same type of healthy foods that other people have access to, you're being left behind. Your zip code today can have a greater effect on your health than your genetic code. So where you live, what food you have access to are all indicators and social determinants of the trajectory of your life. And until I think we have a total mindset and narrative shift and sort of reclaim our health and look at the system as what it is, broken food system, justice system, social systems. There's a lot of flaws. And until we think about how we can address these from a perspective change, I think that's the only thing that's going to start to get us out of this 400-year plight that we have been trying to make progress around and chipping away and then falling back down, then chipping away and then falling back down. But growing your own food is a constant, sustainable way to break that cycle.
It's also a way to make people feel good about their lives.
So good.
I mean,
so good.
Being with nature, being with vegetables, you know, getting into the dirt. Many years ago, I did have a garden. It's been a long time, but I remember the feeling of peace that I would feel, you know, getting your feet in, you know, into that dirt and your hands dirty. And then, you know, you watch and you wait and do you think maybe that's part of what we do need to change? As you're saying, you have to feel good. And then it's empowering for people to feel that their own personal lives are changing as a result of being part of a garden and then coming home with those wonderful vegetables. I mean, it's very simple. I mean, the problem is sprawling. The solution is simple. You know, what we can do to put food in people's hands is not to be what we tend to overcomplicate it. And just like you said, Meredith, the connection is immediate. A child plants a green bean, sees it come up in a week, has plants in 3 weeks, has vegetables in 4, and they're like, that's my green bean. That costs money. I can grow that. That's a sustainable resource. I can be a farmer. I can grow microgreens. It's an immediate connection. No one has ever said, I don't want those collard greens. I'm okay. So yeah, there is an inherent connection to wanting to grow your own food, wanting to eat healthy food. It's in us. It's in all of us. It's our connection. It's our grounding. Even if you don't know you need to be grounded, putting your hands in that soil, you're grounded. Now you have the kids and they're probably much easier to reach than the parents, right? Because they're young and they haven't maybe been eating a lot of unhealthy foods for that long. And I'm wondering, is it harder to reach the parents who might just be used to, you know, grabbing a burger, you know, from, I don't want to say where, but, you know, grabbing a burger, which, you know, these burgers are cheap at these places and French fries and living on that because they're cheap and easy because people, it's hard for people, you know, to make their own food and prepare their own food that's healthy. It requires a lot more effort. So I was just wondering, how do the parents or the people in the neighborhoods, do they respond as quickly as the children?
They do. They really do. One of the first donors I ever sat down with said, you know, I think you're gonna have a hard time getting people to shift their eating habits and they're not going to want to give up their, and a lot of our work is not about telling people you can never have another hot fry again. No, you can have a hot fry if you do well on a test, maybe once a month. You want to have more vegetables than hot fries. It's a balance. So we're just sort of introducing easily adoptable tools, and our parents are just as excited about having fresh food in their backyards. It's like you said, it's very empowering, very connecting kind of a resource to have in your backyard.
Yeah.
Meredith, can I interject right here for just a second? If there's anybody on Zoom that would like to ask a question, to please feel free to put it in the chat feature, and we'll have an opportunity for a little bit of Q&A before we transition into meditation. So just wanted to invite people to do that.
You know, what's coming to me is, you know, as I sit here and I listen to both of you is that, you know, like you were saying, it's a broken system. All of these systems are broken. And as Bradley's saying, they go back hundreds of years, you know, and it, you know, with many groups, but of course, mainly, you know, I think the African Americans have suffered far more than anybody else. And Native Americans have suffered, as you were saying, a lot too. But both of you have been involved in something that's really is trying to create change and has been trying to create change. And I was wondering, I'm thinking about the tolerance program that you have with the Southern Law, you know, Poverty Program organization. What is the tolerance program that you've brought to the schools, and is it still effective, or is it still being used?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to say something really quick. You know, Asha's when she was talking about her program, made me think about another program that I'm involved in, which is Women in Training, which is a nonprofit that my daughter started to eradicate period poverty which provides menstrual and hygiene products to girls and women, young women in need, and people who menstruate, non-binary people as well. And because we found that our research has shown that 1 in 4, since the pandemic started, it was 1 in 5, but now it's 1 in 4 girls do not have the products they need in order to live their lives, basically go to school, go to work, leave the house, so our nonprofit provides those to young girls and women in the Montgomery area, and we're looking to expand. But the teaching tolerance program, which recently changed its name to Learning for Justice, just this month, is one that provides resources for teachers in schools to really fight back against intolerance, injustice, racial inequality, and in the way that young people are being instructed in the schools. One project, that, and I learned a lot from this. Some of what I touched on, when we started about slavery, I really learned from the project they have called Teaching Hard History, slavery, the history of slavery. Because it's something that I didn't get in school. I think most of us didn't really get the full understanding, of the slave trade in America, and how it has repercussions today, in terms of mass incarceration, in terms of inequities in education, and economic inequities. A lot of it really just stems from that original sin, like I was saying, and it's something that along with other things, one of the other things that Learning for Justice, formerly Teaching Tolerance, teaches is how to determine, and this is something Meredith and I talked about a couple of days ago, about how to determine what is true and what is false on the internet. Young people are being indoctrinated with hate, essentially, from these groups that are able to reach the kids where they are, through social media and online, and they're spreading these false doctrines of one race being better than the other, and therefore the other races need to have their rights taken away. And so one of the things that Learning for Justice does is to teach kids how to determine what is true from what is false. And that's something not only our kids need, but a lot of the adults need, as we could see recently with QAnon and these other groups out there spreading falsities that people just believe, take on face value, in spite of the facts that they can see with their own eyes, but they just believe it, anyway.
We do have some questions coming in, and if I could put that in to the equation right now. And the questions, I'll read it.
Yeah, I mean, and I was sharing this with Meredith too, but I've always felt that I was born to do this work of fighting, against injustice. I was born in January of '68, just a couple of months, really, less than 3 months before Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And having learned this fact, when I was old enough to understand it, I just got the sense that there was some kind of a spiritual connection between King and the movement and myself. The timeline of sort of the, at the Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, which is operated by the Southern Poverty Law Center, there's a timeline that goes from 1954 to 1968, and it chronicles sort of the names of martyrs who were assassinated, essentially, or lost their lives because of the movement. And starting with the 1954 Brown decision up until King's assassination. And so and there's a space between 68 and where it sort of indicates there's a space in time there that needs to be filled, you know. And I feel like, you know, with my timeline beginning at the end of the civil rights era and understanding fully that there's more work to do. We've come a long way, you know, but we still have a long way to go. I just feel and always have felt that sort of spiritual connection to the movement.
Oh, that's very powerful.
Mhm.
And I can tell that it must keep you, you know, having this exuberance for what you're doing and not getting frustrated. I mean, so many people try to do something in the world and then they give up, or they don't, you know, they just don't continue it because they don't see the success. And would you say that part of it is just you have to keep going? You know, you cannot almost take no for an answer. Like you just keep going with, and you have made so much progress. I mean, you were telling me about some of those stories even that you did in the past. Just give an example of the story with you went to an apartment.
Public housing, the air
Yes,
conditioners.
and-
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, well, you know, it's
was-
just
right.
a small story that made, you know, an important difference for just the lives and the comfort of people living in public housing in South Florida. So when I was a reporter for the Sun Sentinel, and I was covering the city of Delray Beach, which in Palm Beach County, which of course, you know, includes the Delray Beach Housing Authority.
Mhm.
And just in the course of, you know, my reporting and just you know, checking out, you know, what was going on, you know, I came across people who said, living in public housing, that they were sweltering without air conditioning. You know, none of the units had any air conditioning in them. And you know, some people were trying to squeeze sort of these I guess wall-mounted units in, but you know, and opening the window, which you know was a security issue. You know, but so basically, you know, I wrote a story about this, and you know, soon thereafter, you know, just talked about how people, you know, who were you know, in South Florida, where it's very hot, you know, through most of the year, not just the summer, but throughout the year. You know, I remember when I lived there, you know, having the air conditioner on most of the year, really. You know, I mean, there might have been a couple of months in there, but most of the year I'd have the AC on just to stay comfortable. And then, you know, they're not just a comfort issue, but also people with health conditions like asthma were made worse by the heavy air and the humidity and the heat. It just was an unhealthy situation. So I wrote a story about it, and soon thereafter, people started who had read the story just started donating air conditioners to these folks. And you know, I got a nice letter from Congressman Alcee Hastings, you know, saying, oh, you know, good job on that story, and this is, you know, you're making an important difference. And not too long after that, the housing authority, you know, in their air conditioned cars and offices and homes, you know, decided, oh, well, I guess, you know what, maybe we really do need to provide air conditioning for these folks. And so, you know, it kind of more or less basically shamed them into changing the policy, and they decided that air conditioners would be installed in every unit.
Wow, congratulations. I know it happened a long time ago, but it's a story that once you hear that story, as I heard it and everybody else is hearing it, you don't forget. And it's almost like changing the world one story at a time, or one, I don't know if we could say one vegetable at a time or one garden at a time. What do you all think, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Do we all have to have this attitude about life? I mean, Kathy, would you say that's kind of the attitude that we study with the Brahma Kumaris, just drop by drop by drop, or can we start moving faster, you know, and really change?
Well, let's go to Asha with that one, and the same question, you know, this weight of history, sort of a push-pull, isn't it? It's the weight of history on you, and you're pulled to the future, aren't you, Asha?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that every day.
What's that balance? How do you navigate that? And you know, what is your vision of the future?
Well, so to answer that beautiful question, we were born for this work, I would definitely say yes. I come from two educators and historians and service-minded people, so it's in my DNA. I was definitely born to do this work. I've always felt guided. My angels have always been around. And so I've always felt very sure about every sort of professional decision I've made. And I work from my heart and lead from my heart. So it all definitely was what my path. But living in this sort of, you know, planning for the future while addressing what's going on now and trying to educate and learn from the sins of the past is part of our everyday work. My father is a historian and educator of Black history and anti-Black violence in the state of Florida. So that's also part of my DNA. That also drives my work. The disparities are not just what I see on the ground. I understand them inherently. The stories of Black violence in Florida are astounding and more recent than we would even sort of think of. So I think that our work really lies all across the spectrum. And if we're thinking about the future, for me, the future of food is local. It's thinking about how do we close these gaps in the food system, and we overcomplicate it. It's putting a plant in your backyard, growing a sustainable resource, cutting out the transportation, helping the environment. You know, growing your own food solves so many problems across the gamut that it is the answer. It is the solution. It is the answer to food insecurity. It is the answer to food injustice. And it's just thinking, looking forward, thinking about how do we extrapolate on this idea and bring it into every community in the country. And that's really our goal. I used to be an AmeriCorps director, so my background is in running national programs. And so, you know, this has always been a Miami to California to everywhere in between kind of a model. So that's our 5-year plan.
It's
How do you
great,
keep
Asha.
that enthusiasm? That's, you know, what I'm thinking about is like, you're both very exuberant about what you do, and yet there is so much suffering and we see so much. So what is it, just the fact that you get up every day and you both know that you're going to make a difference in the world and you're doing something good? Or because sometimes, you know, we see so much, especially if, you know, you watch the news at all, or, you know, we do hear so much bad out there and so many horror stories of things that are happening to people, you know, and victims of so much. And, you know, I've been part of an organization that was actually really trying to focus more on the things that benefit people and stories that can really lift people up. And yet we need to know the bad too. We can't just ignore it. Absolutely not. So just wondering what keeps you both so motivated every day?
For me, I think matcha one, and then balance. Right. So like I'm an empath. And so when COVID hit, we expanded our model to include a food distribution program. We are now feeding over 1,000 people a week since April. We do a drive-through pantry. We do prepared delivered meals. And for the first few months of that program, I was on the trucks, unloading the food, seeing the lines, and it took an absolute toll, not just physical from carrying boxes of cantaloupes, but just from seeing the absolute desperation. I was kind of used to it on the food insecurity level. I would see it in neighborhoods. I knew we were solving the problem, but to see it on that scale was really overwhelming. So balancing that with keeping energized every day to do it is they feed each other. It's like you have to do it and you have to stay enthusiastic about it, or you're gonna cry and be having a pit in your stomach because it is really, really bad. But we're making a difference, so that feels good and that's energizing.
Yeah, for me, I mean, you know, one of the stories I did in the last maybe year or so for the SPLC was a hard one, but inspiring at the same time, because I had the opportunity to interview the widow of the pastor who was slain in the Emmanuel AME Church 5 years ago, and how she just, you know, explained just the terror and the trauma of being in there with her daughter. I think she was 8 at the time, and hiding in the pastor's office, you know, having the foresight to lock the door while her husband and you know, other members of the church were murdered. And you know, just telling that tale and just, you know, hearing her talk about her attitude and her spiritual response to it was just one of peace and love and forgiveness. You know, I forgive you, you know, she told the young, you know, white supremacist in court, you know, that she forgave him. for the crime that she was an eyewitness to. And, had it not been for that locked door, because he did try to open the door, she would have been, and her daughter likely would have been the 10th and 11th victim of that massacre. That just is inspirational for me, just in terms of my own soul. And thinking, if she can forgive that, what has anyone done against me that could ever compare to something like that? And don't I have, at least an ounce of forgiveness in my heart to be able to forgive somebody else for their trespass against me? And also, just looking at the whole the Black Lives Matter movement that's going on, it's standing up and standing out against injustice. I mean, you see it happen, and there are those of us who are inspired by that and wanting to end it. Witnessing the injustice or hearing about it from eyewitnesses like Mrs. Pinckney, and wanting to do something to fight against white supremacy, and fight against racial injustice. It's my reason for getting up every morning, so I can do something. I've been spiritually empowered to do this, and I'm going to do something with this gift to make a difference.
These are very profound things that you're sharing, and I'd like to go a little deeper. You've both said that you were born to do this, you have a spiritual connection, it's in your DNA. It's was never an option not to. And, you're very, it's no small thing for people like yourselves who've dedicated your life to service, to serving the world, whether it's one vegetable at a time, one garden, one issue at a time. And there was this question about ancestors. And I want to come back to that. Do you feel you didn't just drop on this earth with all of this, inside of you. Do you feel, particularly, Asha, the weight of history or the inspiration of your ancestors? And who were your ancestors? Who were the inspirations? It might not necessarily be in your biological line, but who do you feel are your ancestors?
Well, I come from, I'm sort of a niche. When people say, well, what are you? I'm a Black Jewish woman. So I've got a whole lot of ancestry that come, that support me and that I am accountable to and feel indebted to. And so that is definitely part of, I think, how I got here and how I have the gifts that I have. I realize more and more, I think everybody can do this. Can everybody write grants and run programs and engage communities and grow food? And as I do it more and more, I realize, well, maybe those are kind of special things that I can do. And so, yeah, I feel indebted to my ancestry, and I have a complicated and dynamic ancestry that's a big part of my why.
And you have the benefit of a historian father who made sure you know all about your ancestry.
That helps. That helps a lot to make the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, it's I'm a hybrid too. Nobody is, I guess what this idea of the white supremacist extremists call racially pure or whatever. I mean, it's just that there's humanity. We're human beings. I come from a long history of enslaved Africans, and I have there are stories that have been passed down through the generations in my family, especially on my father's side of there was one example of an enslaved ancestor who was falsely accused of doing something, and I don't remember all the particulars, but his master came after him and started a fight with him, and he fought back and won the fight. And but then soon he realized that that meant a death sentence for him, essentially, because he would get his friends, his boys, come after him and kill him. So he escaped and ran away and was never heard from again. And so, I mean, so for me, that means that, I have ancestry that, is able to win a fight, but also knows when it's time to walk away or, to run, when it's time to do that. And I also, the part of the hybrid part that I was talking about is that, one of my distant relatives is said to be John Tyler, who was one of the presidents of the United States. And of course, that didn't translate to benefits for my family because, presumably, he had sexually assaulted, one of my great grandmothers, and from that lineage, that we follow. There's the weight of history in the ancestors, but there's also the sense that they're buoying us up. I'll share with you that my father is an ancestor now. He passed away about 5 years ago now, and I still carry his spirit with me, and I do everything that I can to sort of represent him well, as his son. I don't feel the weight of history weighing me down. I feel as though the history in my ancestry is buoying me up and lifting me up and pushing me forward to do greater things, things that perhaps they couldn't do at that time that I can do now because of their lives and their sacrifices.
Feels like both of you have, had these inspirations from ancestors, from family, from people, just something that has really been there with you to not just keep you going, but to really drive you and to make every day for both of you another day where you can create change and you can do something, and that it's something that you're doing that is changing, the way things are in our society. There are so many people, though, that just don't feel that they can do anything. I was wondering, how do you reach people like that, or we reach people like that, to make them aware that we all can make a difference in the world, just drop by drop by drop? And
one of my mentors told me, one of the best ways to try to break that stigma of, I've got to just solve everything, and if I don't solve the whole problem, then I'm just not going to do anything. It's thinking about what can you feasibly do, and then building from that, and not thinking you have to solve the whole thing. You don't have to get 10,000 people registered to vote. Get 10. Start there. So thinking about what is your passion, what problem do you want to solve, and then what tangible, feasible things can you do, what smart goals can you set, and starting there, and not setting lofty, unrealistic goals, but really starting to tackle something that you can actually move the needle on. Is a good place to start.
Yeah, we all have the ability to make a difference by, in small and large ways, by just, seeing whatever issue there may be in front of us and doing something about it. Maybe it's feeding a homeless person, that you see on the street, maybe it's standing up for somebody when you see an injustice, somebody is being, unfairly, targeted or, beaten by the police or whatever, and using your voice to speak out against it. Or it can be, just being aware that, a lot of women don't have what they need, in terms of the period products to be able to live their lives, and doing something, small, to make a difference in their lives. So, I guess I don't really understand or buy the notion that people can't make a difference, because, there's 7 billion people, I believe, on the planet. And if each one of them does something to make a difference, even if it's a small thing, that's a whole lot of change globally. So it's just, I think it's more of a change in attitude than anything, just see a problem, solve a problem, and don't feel like you have to solve all the problems of the world. But collectively, we can do that. We can solve a lot of the problems, if not all of them, if we have the right attitude about it, and
We can all do
and act on
something.
it. So, yeah.
Bradley, you mentioned twice your daughters and the Special Women in Training program. There's a special request if Ediela is on a camera or can pop in to say hello, that would be great, because you and she and your girls saw a problem and did something about it. So I know Veronica, our director, I don't know, Asha, you haven't met her yet, but she wanted to say hello.
Hi.
Wadi, you want to turn your mic on?
Hello.
Oh my. Can you just share some insights into being here and being part of this? You've been our
I've been
our force for change for 35 years. Brad hasn't gotten to meet you. Has Brad met you? I think so. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I met Bradley.
Yeah.
We
In
did
Miami,
meet,
right?
yeah, and I can't remember whether it was at the meditation center or an
I believe it was, at the meditation center. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that, and this is why this question about sometimes carrying the weight of history, carrying the weight of the ancestors and the wrongs and everything else, and at the same time being a little bit detached from that, to be very clear about the inspiration for moving forward. And so I can look at these times and see all the things wrong, but then when I see souls like you with a very clear vision, and that your hearts, your heads, your hands, everything is involved to really make the world a better place. And so one of the things I was thinking about for both of you, I mean, Asha is running on the energy of youth. That's one of the energies she's running on that we don't have. But what do you do to sustain yourself? One thing is what you're doing for the world, and it may or may not be well received. And so not to, that your mental, emotional state shouldn't be dependent on the feedback that you're getting from what it is that you're doing. And so what is that internal thing that you have that keeps you moving, that keeps you, protected from all of the stuff outside of yourself, from all of the flack or the feedback or the awful things that are happening? How do you protect your own integrity in a self, that it's not about being anti something or because you're hurting about something, but something that's very, very pure inside your own self? How do you look after that? And I know that you have the support of your family, that's for sure, but even beyond that, that's unique to you, and that you really know that everything else in the world can change, everything can fall apart, but that thing, you take care of it like as if it's the most precious, jewel in Christendom or beyond.
Well, that's a beautiful question. For me, I've got a toolkit, and I'm always adding to it and subtracting and figuring out what I need in that moment. And I think it's being intuitively in touch with myself and doing the shadow work and the scary parts that you may not want to connect with and think about, but creating that space, which is why this community is so powerful, why the world would be so much more powerful if everybody meditated and went inside. But for me, meditation is one of my top tools in my kit. It will always be the top of the kit. Crystals, sound baths, Epsom salt baths. I got a long self-care list, Asha, it all, lymphatic massage. I have a long self-care list, and I pepper in as needed. It's a lot to give of yourself, as much as we do to serve communities, and you have to give that back. And if you don't feel good, you're not able to reverberate. That's what you're reverberating through the world. So I think it's part of my service to take care of myself so that I can take care of others. So
that's beautiful.
My toolkit. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. I remember when Adiela was here, that one of the things for Adiela was, and I don't know whether she saw it as her direct heritage, but very much to do with West Africa and Nigeria in particular.
Yes.
And the sort of the spirituality practice there. So I don't know if that's part of your family tradition now, if it's something you all do together, or. And so
I came by, I had my
Bradley,
awakening a few years ago. Came by and I found it outside of my family structure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw it with Adiela. So Bradley, what about you? What do you do to sustain that flame inside yourself that's uniquely you, that's, you know, not dependent on anything or anyone else, but that you really look after?
Well, I don't know if this is, I wouldn't say this is unique to me, but it is internal to me in terms of spirituality.
It is, yeah.
And that is just my faith. You know, I'm a believer in, an almighty creator, that sustains us and nourishes us, physically and spiritually. And, that ultimately will deliver us from all manner of, injustice. That's, I do, sort of, I guess you would call it meditation, just spend some time each morning alone, with the scriptures and, reading a passage, meditating on it for a little while, and then praying over, what may have been in the passage, what's going on in my life, my family, my church. I'm and following in the vein of Martin Luther King. I am a member and a deacon and a trustee at Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church, which is, many of you may know, is the church where King led. It really started and led, with what was led by women, I will say, to really start the civil rights movement in the form of the Montgomery bus boycott, which inspired so many, inspired really a lot, the whole movement. That's my church. So, that my grounding, I would say, really is in my faith, and King once said, faith is, taking that first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase.
See the whole staircase, yeah.
And so, that's kind of my motto. Actually, I have that on Facebook, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So that's, I live by that, and there's more than what you can see, in front of you or around you. There's a spiritual force, and then the force of in this form of just an almighty God.
Yeah.
Who I rely on for everything, and everything about me and my whole life flows from that spirit. So that's really what it is for me.
Do you have faith that assuming that we have hundreds of more years or thousands of more years, and I'm not sure that I do, but do you feel that gradually that people will? I was reading something by Leonard. You must know Leonard Pitts, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I'm a colleague of mine.
Yeah. So the piece that he'd written in the Herald this week, and his thing was like about Joe Biden, and where Joe has this idea that he can bring everybody together, and Leonard Pitts sort of saying, I don't believe it, but I'm glad Joe does, And so do you yourself feel that with time, if you see incremental changes, over these, hundreds of years in the US, and we won't even talk about anywhere else in the world, but do you feel that eventually there's a possibility that bit by bit people will get it, and that they can come to just basic goodness, kindness, humanitarian feelings? Do you have that kind of faith?
I do, and I think the more you show it, the more you know it, kind of thing.
Okay.
I mean, I think if we, we want to see a difference in the world. I think we should be that difference.
Yes.
And we want to see more light in the world. Again, King said, that darkness can't get rid of hate. It's only love can produce that light that will will remove the hate, and darkness from the world, So
Yeah.
I think that, each one of us, individually has to, keep our own flame going and keep our own light shining. And, I just believe that, others will,
Yeah.
I mean, the scripture says, we'll see your good works,
Yeah.
and glorify your Father who's in heaven. But I think,
Beautiful.
even more, that also means, others will see your light,
Yeah.
and will also, my faith is that the light will go on in them too. So,
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, but they'll also be reignited.
yes. Mhm.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Asha?
Remember the question? How is it posed?
Well, just in essence, does your faith or your trust see that ultimately that, as they're saying, garden by garden or whatever, but that all of humanity could come to that place of agreed goodness or kindness or
Gosh,
peace?
I hope so. I hope so. And that's what gets me out of bed every morning. So that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Like Bradley's saying, as long as each one is doing their bit in their world, in their space, then we're all contributing. And yes, bit by bit, the drops can become the lake.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a strong proponent of that set of faith. So that's definitely a driving force.
Beautiful. Maybe Kathy or Meredith wants to explain the meaning of Amrit Vela and what it does for either of you.
Well, that's what we've been taught, Adiela, as practicing Brahmakumaris, that time is the most sacred time of the entire day, to be able to make that connection with God, supreme energy, divine energy, whatever you want to call God, and to just like we just sit in silence and try to just make that connection and just create this feeling. I mean, sometimes just meditating on how lucky we are, or for me a lot, I like to meditate on just being content that everything is good and everything is just happening as it should be. Maybe a couple of thoughts that I'll have during meditation. Silence, I love silence, the silence of it, the quiet, as you're saying, Adiela. And I personally, and I'm sure probably most people would say this, that do this practice, know the difference when I haven't done it. If I miss a morning, my day is not the same. When I have that half hour, 45 minutes, I feel empowered all day. I feel good. Even when things don't work out, I'm feeling just so much power and energy. And when I miss, it's like I'm flat, there's just something, and I try to compensate a little more meditation later in the day or something, but I know the difference. Nobody can tell me that otherwise. I know the difference. And and little by little, you start to just feel more power over days of doing this, years of doing it. And it starts to kind of transform the way you think and the way you feel, with a lot of love, and Kathy?
Yes, I certainly would agree with all you've said. And I would just add that it's the moment of presence. It's the moments of bringing myself to presence.
Beautiful.
And if I don't, then the day sort of drags me along. And I feel like I'm always chasing the day.
Yeah.
But if I become present in that way early and, use, like Meredith says, maybe meditate on something or just be silent or in solitude. It's the time when we fill up.
Right. Oh,
and
good.
I know Asha, Veronica said you were running on youthful energy, but I think with your toolkit, you keep your battery very charged. I drive a hybrid. So when I have to keep that battery charged. And I think your energy is beyond that of you. It may even be the energy of the ancestors, that you're riding the flow. And this was a good time, actually. We were going to segue into meditation. But I know for myself, my experience of just this conversation, like sitting in a living room with all of you, it is that small positive step toward being one with everyone from our different perspectives. And this is what happens with diversity. When we bring different voices to the table, we begin to appreciate the oneness, basically.
Yeah.
And when you bring the spirit into that, we may all have different ancestors and different families and different jobs and different issues and, you know, all these differences. But at the end of the day, in that spirit, we are all children of the same source energy, if you will.
Yeah.
And the way we tap into it, the way we've learned the practice is doing it through those early morning hours. And it's the same energy Asha's tapping into. So I'm encouraged. I can get some of that.
Yeah,
Well,
I just
I'm
want
gonna
to
start
say
waking
too.
up at 4,
Oh, okay,
so I can get. I'm gonna start waking up at 4 so I can get some of that grounding to start my day, because my 7:30 a.m. meditation is not as thoughtful and profound as it sounds like this one is.
I just want to say that, you know, I mean, you know, what you are just are talking about there is, you know, people of difference who are finding a connection to, you know, the spirit, you know, the creator, the Holy One, you know, God, however, you know, we may call it. You know, when we lived in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai for about 5 years before coming back, and you know, it just gave me a sort of peace and understanding that you know, that, you know, there really is only one God, and we may have different ways of accessing him, her, the spirit, you know, whatever you want, however you want to address it. But you know, that's a beautiful thing, you know, and you know, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, you know, or whatever other religions, you know, and this is something that I experienced too while meditating with you, in Adiela, you know, in Miami, with the Brahma Kumaris, was that, you know, there's just that sort of spiritual understanding that there's one God, and we all have, you know, our own ways of connecting with that spirit. And, you know, it's something that I see even, you know, within my own household. Like you can see that, you know, just by what we described, you know. I mean, she's getting up at 4 a.m. whatever and doing her own meditation, you know. I'm doing it, you know, maybe a few hours later than that, you know, in a different room in the same house. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're all we're both of us and many others as well around the world are accessing the creator, the spirit, the God, you know, in our own ways. And it's beautiful that we all are able to do that, you know. The God is so infinite in the ways in which we can access him, her, you know, the spirit, you know, however we want to refer to it. And it's just beautiful that we can all do that. And you know, it's something that only, you know, like I think like Asha was saying, you know, we overcomplicate it, you know. It's got to be this way. It's got to be that way, you know. You know, you're getting into heaven, you're not, and all this type of thing, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all able to you know, we have that inside of us to access our spiritual creator. And to me, that's just a beautiful thing. Yeah. I just wanted to lift that up.
Well, the deacon has given us a good introduction to meditation. So we're going to have a few minutes, some meditation, and we have to think about, we've met 2 change agents, we're all change agents, and we can all do something. That's sort of, I think, one of the takeaway messages. So this is our opportunity to reflect for ourselves on what we can do to further a better world ourselves. And then we're going to have a special guided meditation by Sister Jenna. And Sister Jenna has released, for Asha and Bradley, she is the director of the BK centers in the nation's capital. And Ariella, you will know Jenna as the daughter of Gita and Ed, whom you knew in Miami. And she has released an album of meditations with Ricky Kej, and he's a Grammy, I don't know if any of you know him, but he's a Grammy award-winning environmentalist, actually, who's performed at the UN, and he's done many, many socially active things. And he is a composer and does the music behind her commentary. So this is the first time we're premiering it here in Miami. So with that, we'll be back at the end of meditation and we'll wrap up. And if there's any final words you all would like to share with us. Is that okay? Veronica, anything you want to say, or Meredith?
No, that's great, Kevin.
Okay, then we're going to hand it over to Tej and for some wonderful meditation on tonight's topic.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti is the universal language of peace. It is what, it is who every soul is. From the place of peace, I can live out my fullest expression of life. And with deep peace, there is nothing to obstruct my thoughts. I am able to yield to what is and remain conscious to what can be. In peace, I understand you. In peace, you understand me. It is at the center of it all.
Shanti. Thank you for joining us in meditation. So Asha, Bradley, Veronica, Meredith, any last words that you'd like to leave everyone with?
I would just say, if you're here, if you're in this community, it's a good place to start. We're being mindful and just continuing to do this important work, and everything that you all are doing is helping to raise the vibration of the world. And so this is just the most important work that there is. So grateful and honored to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that too. I just earlier in the week, during one of my meditations, I was just praying that that God would use me, in this forum, to really further His kingdom and do something for someone else, just somehow through my participation in this. So it's my hope and my belief that I've done that, and you also have inspired me as well to just sometimes just and I know this, but it's good to emphasize it. Sometimes just sit back and meditate on things, and they'll work themselves out. Sometimes it's not what you do yourself, but what you sort of just allow the spirit to do around you and through you. And so I'm just honored to have been invited to be a part of this, and I want to thank you for including me.
I'm just feeling just so full that it's just like I'm flying just from being in the company of such special people as the two of you. And of course, also Kathy and Veronica joining us, and Adiela. It's like something magical happened tonight. And I could just feel the energy of all of us. It wasn't exactly like we planned it, and everything it seemed like to get better and better, as we went tonight. And what's coming to me is this is how change begins, when people, like-minded people, come together and join and just connect with each other, and then more and more and more. And I just think this is what it's all about, little by little, and just never, ever to lose that feeling that change isn't happening, because it is. Goodness does happen. So I thank you all for, letting me be part of this tonight. And it's just been amazing. It's been wonderful.
It has been. And the conversation will continue.
Yes.
We have the contact info, Bradley, you through the Southern Poverty Law Center or Women in Training. So again, thank you to Asha and Bradley and Meredith, Veronica, and especially to all of you who joined us tonight. We'll look forward to future events. Follow us on social media. Follow Asha, Bradley, Women in Training, Southern Poverty Law Center. And the web will continue to grow.
Can we thank
Absolutely.
Mita and Tej?
Yes, and our tech wizards. It's actually Mita and Tej that were the inspiration for this whole program tonight.
And for Asha.
Thank you.
And for Asha particularly,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So all the best to all of you, and we'll be in touch. Om
Thank
Shanti.
you.
Have a good
Om
week,
Shanti,
everyone.
everybody.
Om Shanti.
Bye.